Ko Ngāti Roa Nui toko iwi, ko Āmoa Pōtiki a Oku Apu, ko Taipure he nui te marae, te awa, Taipure he nui te marae, ko Tangohoi te awa, ko Dan Te Whenua Walker ahau. Kia ora everyone, my name is Dan Walker. I hail from South Taranaki. It's important that it's south, we don't really associate with those North Taranaki fellas. But my mum comes from there, so she's my Māori heritage. She has Ngāti Roa Nui, Ngārue Hine, iwi links, but also through her granddad, Ngāti Kahungunu ki Wairua, so around the East Coast areas, Tūhaurangi, so the Rotorua areas, and Maniopoto. Then she moved down to Christchurch with the trade training scheme and met my dad, an awesome Pākehā fella. He has Scottish and Irish heritage. So I was born in Christchurch. My mum and dad broke up when I was 1 and I went to live with mum. I was your typical sort of little shit. And maybe I was a little bit of a tutu and stuff, but one of mum's boyfriends used to give me the bash, and for any of those whānau who've had that experience, I had the experience at age 5 where I was taken off mum. I got taken off her, she still to this day looks back at that and says that was her biggest mistake. She sort of has taken me and run. So when you hear about all of this stuff with oranga tamariki, you know, there's I've certainly lived through that as well. But eventually I got connected with my dad, and I lived with my dad. He wasn't ready for me. He was flatting with 7 people at the time, but he grew up pretty quickly, and that was sort of my growth from 5 onwards. I was disconnected to my marae. Typical story for a lot of us Māori. Didn't really know my language, and in fact in Christchurch where I was, the narrative in general was just pretty negative around being Māori. So I was one of those undercover brothers where I wouldn't act Māori, wouldn't talk Māori, and therefore I could pretty much say I wasn't Māori. And that was me. I sort of rejected who I was, my identity, and all the way through my primary school, high school years. And as we all know, with our identity, if we reject it for so long, it comes out in negative ways. You get in trouble with the law. And I dropped out of high school with no qualifications. So ended up struggling in those early years. Luckily, I had an amazing Nana chick. Her name is Te Whenua Taranaki. So that's her name, but she's actually from Rotorua. But she moved down to Taranaki and met my granddad, Sani Tamakura Hikuroa. So she's a proud Māori rangatira, mana wahine, and the matriarch of our whānau. So she could see I was struggling, and she invested some time in me to teach me about who I was as a Māori. And for the first time in my life, I started feeling proud of actually having this Māori ancestry. That coupled with her being pretty forceful about getting me into a job, she got me helped me get a job in retail. So I started in retail. That was my entrance into working. Almost lost my job many times. I wasn't really, my heart wasn't in the start, but as I started connecting into my culture, so did my love for who I was as a person, and I started rising up the ranks. Became a store manager at age 21. I was the youngest store manager at Dick Smith Electronics at the time, and really loved that, and loved electronics, loved talking with people, loved building relationships, and then I moved up the ranks into area manager, and then by 26 was national sales manager of Dick Smith Electronics. So I'd sort of rose through this ranks, and I was like doing really well, and with that role I moved up to Tāmaki Makaurau with my wahine, Michelle, who we sort of thought, oh, it's not only going to be a few, Christchurch. Anyone from Christchurch? Oh, cool. Yeah. So, if you're from Christchurch, you just don't like Aucklanders. I don't know why. But it's rugby and everything. But we didn't think we were going to stay here very long. But we fell in love with this place. our 3 kids were born here, and so this became our home. And I just mihi to Ngāti Whātua, Ki Orake, and all of the mana whenua around Tāmaki Makaurau for their manaakitanga so that we can be here today and live our beautiful lives. So made Tāmaki home, moved to Noel Leeming as a national sales manager there, and that was an amazing experience. And then from there I went to Samsung as national sales manager. That was my first global role, and I thought, yeah, I've made it. Went over to America, hang out with the bros over there, doing unboxing and stuff like that. And you know, it was kind of like a different life for me. But what happened was I got restructured. It was my first time having a restructure. Those who are in the corporate space will know it's a part of life these days, so you just got to get used to restructures. But that, for me, it was a big ego hit, and it was my first facing of failure, and all of these feelings of in my junior years of not being good enough. You know, the Māori in me, sort of all those insecurities came out, and I took a bit of a hit in terms of my ego. What I know now is that what we need to be adaptable these days. We need to be able to move with the times, and particularly Māori and Pasifika, we need to be, you know, what our superpower is how we have moved into this, the Pākehā, Te Ao Pākehā, and also I acknowledge all of our migrants as well who have moved into this new culture and they've made it something for themselves. So our superpower is how we can actually come into this space and bring our cultural self, but also adapt to that new culture, and that's I think is going to hold us in good stead for the future. So through that, Samsung, I went to Dell Technologies, and I was lucky enough to come to Microsoft. Went back to university and did my thesis. I did my thesis on tikanga Māori ki te ao matehiko, which is Māori values as a framework for digital leadership. My belief is that you know, all of these cool technologies, AI and machine learning, you've got these great opportunities. It's the biggest opportunity for all of our whānau, all of our society in general. But we're seeing all of these algorithmic biases coming out about the skin colour, about women, about Indigenous. So how do we put a tikanga Māori values framework around that so that it has to go through that filter and make sure that it puts not just people at the heart of it, but also our environment, also our cultures, all of these things that are important to us. Money can be the outcome. Money shouldn't be the motivator, right? And so through that, I managed to get recruited into Microsoft, and I'm now a cloud applications and infrastructure specialist. So been in this role now for 2.5 years, 3 years, and when I first got in here, I'm like, where's the Māori? And you know, I'm mihi to Teresa, because Teresa was here before me, and even it would have been even worse in her time, and she helped make some big changes so that when I came in, there was these things that were already happening. And so that is my kaupapa. I want to make Microsoft the Indigenous employer of choice, so that rather than us trying to go out there and recruit, and obviously working with amazing partners like Tuputoa, you know, we want to go out there and pull Māori and Pasifika in. Well, how about we reverse that and make our Microsoft, our culture, our values, a place where Indigenous come in and go, I want to work here. I love this place. I feel safe. I feel comfortable here. So that corridor sort of got me into the right kind of places. Vanessa, she's got links into Redmond, and she connected me up with the Global Vice President of Office globally. His name's Chris, and he's got a passion for Indigenous as well. And we said, what would it look like if we created a global diversity pillar called Indigenous in Microsoft? Creating a safe space for our Indigenous whānau within Microsoft, but then putting an Indigenous lens across our Microsoft technologies for Indigenous externally. And he's like, F yeah. And so that's how we bought, the kākano of Indigenous at Microsoft. I'm the global co-chair. We've got Willow, who's a Native American from America, and we've got a leadership team of global people. We just had our monthly hui today, and you know, we had our Canadian Indigenous whānau on there, and they wanted a safe space to talk about the 215 tamariki that were found, that were buried at the native land schools in Canada. And so, we had a moment of silence and a karakia for them, and I felt so warm, because we're creating this space for our Indigenous whānau to express themselves, a safe space. That's culture. That's changing our culture, and that's creating a legacy that was started with Teresa and moving forward into the future. So what is Indigenous in Microsoft? So we are a group of Indigenous and allies within Microsoft, and we are keen to change the game, create an Indigenous employer of choice within Microsoft. We've got all sorts of things we're talking about, man. LinkedIn. We've got over 1 billion people on LinkedIn. That's owned by Microsoft. That is a massive social media platform with a heart. How do we create that more Indigenous? SwiftKey. Has anyone heard of SwiftKey? Yep, one person, kapai. So SwiftKey is the biggest. It's got over 500 million downloads. It's the biggest third-party platform owned by Microsoft, and that's now got Te Reo Māori and Indigenous languages within there. So all of these big platforms, Microsoft can't change it themselves. We're not going to save anyone, but we can uplift communities. We can uplift the people who are out there, you people who are doing good things in your communities, good things for Māori Pasifika and Indigenous whānaus. That's where Microsoft can play. We're not the ones who come in and top, because even last week at the Whāriki launch, where I saw you too, bro, there was a kuia there who said, oh yeah, Microsoft, you guys came and spoke to us at a hapu event 6 years ago, and then you invested and then walked away. That made me real pody, real sad, because it's like Microsoft can be a vehicle for change, but we're just a moment in time. We may be even gone next year, but that hapu, that community will be there forever. So how do we protect that? And I believe we should be uplifting Māori and Pasifika and Indigenous, not creating our own programs. That's my kōrero. Anyway, lovely to see you all. Lovely to welcome you here. You're going to be amazed by Mike Muka and he's the actual one in the whānau doing it. And yeah, I look up to this fella. So yeah, nō reira, e aku nui aku rangatira. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou tātou. Appreciate it.